I want control over my life. Hello, I am 16 years old. Yes, I realize this sounds like a typical complaint from a teenager, and of course, I will likely be perceived as overly dramatic, but honestly, I do not care because people do not understand how I truly feel. To get to the point, the pandemic began before 6th grade when I was 11, and it really impacted me. My mother is not the worst, but she is certainly not the best. Still, I should express gratitude for having a mother who provides me with shelter, my own room, and food. I continue to experience lingering effects from the pandemic. I feel as though I am still 13 instead of 16. Time is moving too quickly, and I must now focus on my future, which makes me anxious. I watch as everything seems to be falling apart. I am a straight-A student, bilingual, enrolled in an art program, and taking multiple advanced STEM and Spanish classes, including advanced placement courses. That is remarkable for a student. I should be incredibly happy, but I am not. I feel as though I am on a never-ending pedestal, trying to maintain my balance so my mother does not lose her composure when she sees a grade of B or lower. I transferred from my former school, where all my friends were, to this new school that is supposed to support my art. While it is fantastic to have these opportunities, the incompetent school district and the government seem to be taking them away. My school has many students who come from Hispanic, Latino, and low-income backgrounds. The programs, classes, and our schedules have significantly propelled us toward reaching our potential and granted us opportunities for a brighter future. Coming from a low-income family and being a first-generation student, I have a great deal of work ahead of me to make not just myself proud, but also my family and community in order to break the cycle of poverty. As I mentioned, I am currently taking Spanish classes, enrolled in Advanced Placement Spanish Language, and plan to take Advanced Placement Spanish Literature next year. I will graduate with a minor in foreign languages, which will help me stand out to colleges. However, that is not the only aspect that will make me distinctive, as I am majoring in visual arts within the art program, which will also enhance my appeal. I am set to graduate in white, and I will complete 6 years' worth of science courses along with summer college classes, all within just 4 years of high school. Can you believe the opportunities we, as students, have, along with the support we receive? Yes, it is remarkable. We aim to end the cycle of poverty and expand our horizons through art. However, this is being taken away by the school board due to cost concerns, while they are willing to spend significant amounts on schools located in wealthier areas and communities with higher incomes. Some schools have swimming pools, roller hockey rinks, and 2 gyms, one of which is 2 stories high. Meanwhile, my current school has a building that is sinking, and our classrooms are inadequate for certain subjects. We desperately need the funding that the district has been hoarding to support the art program. One of the schools nearby requires new buildings because their conditions are abhorrent. At my former school, funding has been reduced for just 1 staff member on the school board. Are they serious? It sounds like their schools are in disarray. Many students enrolled in standard classes are there for a reason. Why can't the board recognize the numerous successful students? My current and previous schools have the highest graduation rates, university acceptance rates, and career pathway completions compared to other schools within the district. The board has been withholding funds, yet they argue that our educational system and established culture are expensive, but they are the ones taking and withholding our money. Now, let's pivot from discussing the school board. I am genuinely worried about my future, especially given the current state of the government and the changes affecting our education system. I already feel out of place at school because I left my friends behind to prioritize education and opportunities, focusing on personal success and self-fulfillment rather than happiness, making memories, and feeling at home within an inclusive, supportive community. But am I truly enjoying this? I would be dishonest if I claimed I was. I genuinely love my art teachers, my classes, and the art program community, but I do not think I appreciate the overall school experience unless we focus solely on my art classes. I truly like my teachers, they are wonderful. However, I do not get along well with most of the students. Apparently, I am seen as mature due to my moral values. I am not claiming perfection, but can people not display some decency, respect, and empathy? I only connect with about 10 people in that school or fewer. I feel miserable. I miss my friends from my former school immensely. I grew up alongside them in the same charter school from kindergarten through 8th grade, and we still hang out since we attended the high school next door. However, I moved to another school in the district that has an art-focused program at the start of my sophomore year. I completed the first semester with 7 as across 8 of my classes, with 1 B- in honors chemistry, which is technically equivalent to an A in the grading system, but I still feel disappointed. Currently, I am in the second semester of 10th grade. Am I doing well? No. At this moment, I have 3 A's, 2 B's, 1 F, and 1 C. How could this happen? I have never struggled academically before. I have consistently kept up and maintained all as since middle school. I feel overwhelmed. Since returning from winter break, I have not been completing my English or advanced placement world history assignments. I have been trapped in a cycle of sleeping and isolating myself in my room every day during winter break and after school on weekends. My room becomes cluttered no matter how often I clean it. I'm aware that it is unhygienic. Even my classmates are questioning what is going on since I used to work so diligently. I have simply stopped. I discussed my plans for junior and senior year with my school counselor, including the classes I wish to take. She looked at me and mentioned that I was going to feel depressed and anxious since most of my junior classes would be advanced placement and honors classes, with my senior year entirely filled with advanced placement and honors courses. She suggested that I should enjoy my high school years while managing my academics so that I would not look back regretting that I wasted my youth. If I genuinely wanted to be happy, I would not have transferred to this school. I would have stayed with my friends and pursued art activities at community college before transferring to a university. I would not have to worry about being depressed or anxious during my junior and senior years, because I have already been anxious and miserable since 5th grade, and it is only worse now that I am away from the people I truly love. They are the ones who encourage me to achieve excellent grades, and my opportunities and future are at risk. Ultimately, everyone feels pressured to sacrifice their youth and happiness for a mere diploma, and to at least receive a waitlist notification from universities, despite all our effort. I have raised this issue with my teachers and my mother to gather their opinions, and they have echoed similar sentiments. I have felt unwell since 5th grade, and the situation has only worsened over time. It is now adversely affecting my grades. I have always been concerned about my future and academics, so yes, I am genuinely panicking about this. Why am I allowing myself to experience this? Why am I being so selfish, greedy, and ungrateful? But I am exhausted. I am fatigued by everything happening in the world. I am weary from pushing myself to please my mother with my grades and possibly being waitlisted when I begin applying to universities. I am tired of inflicting this on myself. I am weary of being obstinate. I am fatigued from the headaches. I am mentally drained by school and the school district. My future hangs in the balance. My chances of achieving a comfortable and stable life feel unattainable. I cannot satisfy my family, I cannot meet the expectations of the education system, and I cannot fulfill my own standards. Therefore, I have given up. I am weary. I have ceased playing volleyball, my favorite sport. I used to dedicate time to joining teams at recreational centers as well as school teams. I have stopped reading and indulging in the shows that I love. I have even halted my drawing and artistic endeavors. So, what have I been doing since returning from winter break? I have remained in my room, in bed, reflecting on all of this and more. I have also been writing numerous speeches, attending protests, and advocating for both of my schools at board meetings, pleading to preserve our current schedule, which allows us to express ourselves, obtain personal and academic success, and work toward a stable, comfortable future while also striving to break the cycle of poverty and preserve creativity among artists. And of course, I have been mindlessly scrolling through social media, thanks to that ridiculous phone and electronics. I currently have over 21 missing assignments in English and Advanced Placement World History, and the deadline is tomorrow, or rather today since it is now Monday, for progress reports. I could have used this entire week and my weekend to work on them, but here I am in my bed, stagnating and crying over my future and watching my hard work and opportunities deteriorate. Thank you for listening to part of my rant. Any advice would be greatly appreciated. Goodbye. Story 2. I am in love with my best friend, who is in a relationship. Hello, everyone. I would like to provide some background regarding the situation. I am a 26-year-old male, and my friend, whom I will refer to as Morgan, is 23 years old. We connected approximately 4 years ago through an online gaming community. Morgan and I quickly became friends, communicating with each other daily. After a while, we discovered that we lived about an hour apart. However, since we are both quite introverted and shy, we never met face to face, and she eventually relocated to another state. Our communication continued, and after roughly 6 months of conversing, we shared our feelings for each other. While we never established a formal relationship, our conversations became more intense, eventually including sexting and sharing explicit photographs. A few weeks to a month later, I experienced a mental breakdown and convinced myself that I did not deserve any friends, including Morgan. Consequently, I self-sabotaged all my friendships, including our own. I briefly explained to her that I was dealing with personal issues and needed space, but did not provide many details before blocking her. A day or so later, after regaining control over my emotions, I realized my mistake, but felt too ashamed to reach out to her. Several months passed, and I logged into a game we used to play together. I noticed that I had not removed or blocked her on this platform, and she happened to be online. I sent her a brief apology and inquired about how she was doing. She accepted my apology, and we engaged in small talk about the game and life in general. Our conversations remained brief, becoming the norm for quite some time. I would see her online every few weeks to a month, message her, exchange small talk, and then we would go our separate ways. Fast forward to 2024, about 2 years after our fallout, when she reached out to me one day while I was online to ask for help with something in the game. This marked our first time playing together in several years. While gaming, we had more profound conversations about life, during which I learned that she had been in a relationship for over a year and had moved back to the same state as me to live with her boyfriend. After chatting for a while, Morgan asked if I would like to meet him, and he subsequently joined us in the game. The three of us got along exceptionally well, and they invited me to join their friend group. Shortly afterward, they suggested meeting in person for lunch, which I accepted despite my shyness and introversion. The lunch went surprisingly well. Even though none of us were particularly social, we managed to have a great time, and going out to eat or hanging out at the mall became a weekly tradition for us. As we approached the end of 2024, the situation started to become more complex. During this time, Morgan and I grew increasingly closer. I unblocked her on social media, and our conversations became more frequent, essentially amounting to talking 24/7. One day, I realized that my feelings for her had resurfaced. I found myself smiling at her messages and wanting to speak with her constantly. I genuinely appreciated her presence. However, I hesitated to bring anything up with her, knowing she could not reciprocate my feelings due to her relationship, and I wanted to avoid creating any tension between us, so I kept my emotions to myself. As the months passed, Morgan and I continued to grow closer, displaying tenderness toward one another. We expressed how much we valued each other, mentioned how we missed each other during moments of silence, and even told each other that we loved the friendship we had developed. While I felt content about our strong bond, I soon realized that our closeness was not where it ended. It escalated to exchanging compliments, which eventually morphed into playful and lighthearted flirting. Initially, this flirting remained confined to direct messages, but it gradually seeped into our in-person interactions. One day, while we were getting coffee with her boyfriend, he stepped away to use the restroom. We were laughing and joking when I playfully reached for her drink. In response, she placed her hand on mine to push it away, and we froze. Our hands were intertwined, and despite not being eye to eye, we both continued to laugh, yet neither of us moved. This moment lasted about a minute or two until we heard the bathroom door open, prompting both of us to pull away. This was where my feelings of guilt began. I recognized that what had just occurred was not standard behavior, but I convinced myself I was overthinking it and dismissed the thought, not realizing that this was only the beginning. Following that day, similar moments started to occur more frequently. Sometimes it was initiated by me, sometimes by her, and occasionally, both of us contributed. It felt as if we were searching for any opportunity to express our affection. There was even a time when she lay in my arms while her boyfriend had to leave to retrieve something while I visited their home. At that point, it became nearly undeniable what was happening, and my guilt intensified as I felt powerless to stop it or broach the subject with her, which made me feel like the antagonist in this story. It escalated to her inviting me over while her boyfriend was at work, where we would sit together outside, either at a park bench or picnic table. Usually, she would sit on the table while I stood between her legs, and we would hold hands or wrap our arms around one another. Although we never kissed or progressed beyond this physical closeness, the key word is physical. There were a few nights when our playful flirting transitioned into actual sexting. As New Year's approached, I had fallen in love with her, but it had become increasingly burdensome. Throughout this time, I had largely ignored the deeper implications of our interactions, attempting merely to enjoy the moments as they unfolded, but I could only maintain that mindset for so long. Eventually, the wave of guilt and realization hit me hard. I felt and still feel like a terrible person for allowing it to escalate to this point, so I decided to confront her about it. One day, I requested to speak with her privately and address the elephant in the room. What was going on? Why were we acting this way? What did any of it mean? I could see that she, too, was avoiding the gravity of the situation, because when I brought it up, I noticed a shift in her demeanor. She confessed that when I returned, a small flame for me lingered that she had not acknowledged, and it eventually grew into what it had become. She admitted that her relationship with her boyfriend was struggling, and it felt nice to receive so much attention and affection from someone, given that her boyfriend was not providing her with enough. In her words, I was filling the void he left behind. We discussed the future, and she concluded that she wanted to commit to her boyfriend and resolve their issues. Despite knowing it was wrong, those words shattered me. I realized that I desired her and had genuinely fallen in love with her. Yet, a deep internal conflict arose. My heart urged me to fight for her, but I maintained enough self-control to refrain from doing so. I am fully aware that I am the villain in this scenario. Our friendship was awkward in the following weeks. We exchanged fewer messages, and when we did communicate, it reverted to superficial topics. However, it wasn't long before we broke out of that cycle, and we found ourselves in our current situation. It has been roughly 2 to 3 months since we discussed the dynamics between us. I am uncertain how to process everything. We have returned to our regular conversations with minimal mention of our previous issues. I say minimal because I still observe hints of how things used to be. We continue to engage in playful flirtation, exchanging suggestive comments without allowing them to escalate. However, there are still many questions lingering. She expresses a desire to share physical affection with me. She still asks for cuddles, only through direct messaging, not in person, and occasionally wants physical moments with me. Just a week or two ago, while at their home watching a movie, her boyfriend and I were lying on the couch while Morgan sat nearby. When her boyfriend fell asleep, I lay to the side of the couch and raised my hand over the armrest for a fist bump. Instead, Morgan placed her hand on my wrist and began to rub her hand gently up and down my arm, and we ultimately held hands once again. I am overwhelmed with guilt because, despite my rational mind acknowledging how wrong this is, my heart overrides that reasoning, allowing it to happen. After returning home that night, I asked her why she wanted to do that again. She responded that, to her, it didn't mean anything, that it was just her way of showing affection to her best friend in a platonic manner. I try to accept her explanation at face value, but it feels unconvincing. Now, I am grappling with a torrent of emotions: love, confusion, guilt, self-loathing, and intense uncertainty. I've asked her several times about the meaning behind her actions, and she consistently responds that it is her way of expressing love for me in a platonic sense. However, that explanation does not align with her actions. All I want is complete clarity to better understand the situation. But this uncertainty has left me paralyzed, hindering my ability to establish necessary boundaries in this predicament. Story 3. Aita in an unexpected love triangle with 2 guys. Before the story begins, please recognize that everyone involved in this narrative, including myself, is not necessarily pure or virtuous. We embody a morally ambiguous nature, and I am conscious of this reality. Thank you. For the past 2 weeks, I, 18 years old, female, have found myself in quite a predicament involving two individuals. B, 19 years old, male, and K, 21 years old, male. On the surface, this entire experience resembles a typical teenage romantic comedy that tends to stress its audience, particularly myself. My mind has been aching more than my heart over it, and I cannot resist the urge to vent about it to total strangers. To provide some context, I, 18 years old, female, and K, 21 years old, male, had been entangled in a highly toxic, verbally and sexually abusive relationship that lasted 11 months. For the most part, it was long distance, characterized by completely mismatched time zones, which fueled incessant arguments. Whenever we did meet in person, the joy was fleeting because I discovered that he had cheated on me with another girl during a period of reduced contact. Some may feel frustrated knowing that I not only forgave him, but also remained with him for an additional 4 months. There are two primary reasons for this. First, I was thoroughly manipulated by his lies and excuses, along with his overwhelming tears and flowers begging for forgiveness. Second, I felt guilty, believing I might have played a role in his betrayal, possibly inciting him to seek petty revenge. To elaborate on the second point, I need to rewind to the 3-month mark of my relationship with K. During that time, I met B, 19 years old, male, at a school party where he was an external attendee. I had the opportunity to converse with him since he was a friend of a friend, and we connected quickly. Although nothing physical transpired, with no kissing or crossing any boundaries, we did hold hands during a group game, and I clung to B as he transported me on his motorcycle. It was evident that B had an interest in me, demonstrated by how attentively he focused on me that night, accompanied by subtle flirtation. Even though I was sober and aware that I had a boyfriend, I still enabled B to kiss advances and even provided him with my Instagram and Snapchat. In all honesty, it didn't feel like I was engaging in infidelity. K had access to all my social media accounts, and I took the initiative to share every detail about the party with him, including the hand holding and hugging. Unsurprisingly, K harbored intense animosity towards B, and the feeling was mutual. B would openly insult and flirt with me on Instagram, fully aware that K could see it. In turn, K would message him back through my account. Truthfully, I enjoyed the attention from B and relished K to K's jealousy. However, it escalated to the point where K and I fought daily, and it became increasingly futile. What ultimately ended our arrangement was B to K's best friend, who I will refer to as S, 19 years old, male, revealing that B actually had a girlfriend and that they regularly cheated on one another. I found this revelation deeply unappealing, as I do not feel comfortable pursuing other girls' boyfriends. I informed B that we could no longer be friends before unfollowing him. I did not see B again for 7 months. Fast forward to the 11-month mark of my relationship with K, which never showed any signs of improvement. I found myself on the edge of despair, feeling suicidal twice, standing dangerously close to a fall from the railing. Everything felt suffocating, and I was in pain. In a bid to protect myself, I requested some solitude. However, after calming down and regaining my composure post-panic attack, K vanished. I texted him every day for a week: good morning messages, good night texts, I love you messages, I miss you notes, and I'm sorry reminders. I received no response. My hope began to dwindle. Simultaneously, I eliminated all evidence of my relationship with K from my Instagram and revoked his access to my account. The very next day, B reached out. He remained the same flirty, charming, and humorous person I had remembered, offering me the attention I had missed from K over the past 7 months. However, I refrained from reciprocating the flirtation, knowing that without an explicit "let's break up" message, I was still in a relationship. But B was indifferent. In his mind, it was over, and truly it was. It felt undeniably strange that the man I hadn't seen in 7 months suddenly re-entered my life. To top it off, he willingly volunteered to be my rebound. While I liked the idea, I was also wary of his previous cheating incident. Nevertheless, with his company, I did not cry for the entire week K was absent. I laughed, I smiled, and for the first time in a long while, I felt genuinely happy. Yet, I didn't love B. His flirtatious nature came across as lustful, a facade that resembled that of a playboy. Thus, I never allowed myself to fully open up around him. Nonetheless, there were moments when I sensed his sincerity. He seemed jealous of me, upset when I failed to give him attention, and genuinely cared. During those instances, I found myself smiling at my cute rebound and gradually realized I was starting to genuinely develop feelings for him. This was troublesome. Further complicating matters, Kay decided to text me one random Saturday, stating he needed to have a final discussion, during which he suggested we should not continue our relationship. I did not cry or feel sad, which was entirely new for me. I had shed tears daily for 7 months, and there were no tears left to spill. While Kay went on and on, placing blame for every issue in our relationship, I stood firm and requested a breakup. This shocked Kay, which seemed utterly absurd given his audacity. To make a long story short, Kay reluctantly agreed, saying things like, "This is not over and we'll try again in the future." Over the next few days, he experienced multiple mood swings, asking, "Are you okay? Are you crying? Do you hate me? You ruined my life. I love you, and I don't hate you." It felt incredibly exhausting, and I was trying to move forward. B also expressed jealousy, knowing I was still in contact with K, causing me to feel jealousy as well. What truly baffled my mind, however, was B's sudden ultimatum. He told me that our entire rebound situation was not fulfilling for him, claiming I was not even giving him a chance, labeling me as boring as a love interest, and insisting that I kept ignoring his romantic advances. I was taken aback, truly shocked. There were moments of silence for reflection, leading to both of us admitting our mutual feelings. Unfortunately, the situation was far too complex. Having just emerged from an 11-month-long long-distance relationship with a man in the States, jumping into another long-distance relationship with a guy from Australia felt like a poor choice. For context, I am Asian, living in Asia. His situation was also complicated. He was pursuing his dream of becoming an athlete, lacking the means to treat me as he desired. On a separate note, the cheating incident involved multiple parties, including B, a girl named A, 18 years old, and myself, leading to widespread misunderstanding. To summarize the current circumstances, my now ex-boyfriend, K, 21 years old, male, still harbors hopes of reconciling in the future and remains completely unaware of my current situation with B, 19 years old, male, who has romantic feelings for me. Yet we cannot establish a definitive relationship due to my past, his future ambitions, and the geographical distance between us. My other ex, J, 16 years old, male, randomly appears and disappears, which I hope will not cause further complications. My male best friend, T, 19 years old, male, keeps asking why I did not accept his earlier confessions, creating an awkward dynamic, but he remains my strongest supporter during this time. P.S. Notes TMI. 1. I do have female friends in addition to my male friends. 2. I have experienced my share of relationships, but I have yet to lose my virginity, so no, I do not sleep around. 3. I have feelings for B romantically, but I do not love him yet. I once loved K, and I may still hold a significant soft spot for him due to the genuine affection he showed me despite the toxicity. I retain a minor soft spot for J because of his age. I do not have any feelings for T. 4. This is not a fictional tale or a fabricated narrative. It may have been poorly narrated from my perspective, but it is entirely true and honest. 5. I do not necessarily seek advice, but I am open to hearing diverse opinions. Story 4. Ada for not returning my sister's, 31F, call and suggesting she might benefit from therapy. I, 34 years old, female, have one sister, 31 years old, female. We reside in different cities and usually communicate through texts or calls quite frequently. My sister has never experienced a romantic relationship in her life. She has not even gone on a date and lacks any significant adult friendships. Since last summer, she has developed an infatuation for her sports instructor, 31 years old, male, who is currently in a few-month-long relationship. I believe it's been a year at this point with another woman. As the months progressed, my sister became increasingly distressed about her feelings for him. Between June 2024 and January 2025, she would call me at least once a week for a minimum of 45 minutes to express her feelings and weigh her options. Whether to remain silent and continue her lessons, quit without explanation, or disclose her feelings and stop attending classes. Over this time, I provided her with countless hours of advice. Eventually, I recognized that her calls were becoming a compulsive need for reassurance about her feelings and whether it was acceptable to take action or refrain from doing so. For context, my sister has not been diagnosed with any mental health conditions. She has never consulted a therapist or mental health professional, while I have been diagnosed with obsessive-compulsive disorder and have struggled with similar behaviors in the past. I understand that sharing my concerns in this post may also stem from a desire for reassurance. The last time I spoke to her about her crush was at the very end of January. We talked for an hour, and once again, she decided to continue her lessons and refrain from saying anything for the moment. In early February, she messaged me, stating she needed to discuss the situation. I was experiencing a series of stressful work circumstances. Specific details aren't necessary, but I had worked over 80 hours in 2 consecutive weeks, so I informed her that my week was hectic and busy, and I couldn't speak that evening. She inquired about later in the week, and I honestly told her that my week had been overwhelming, and I was uncertain about when I would be available to talk. I apologized for being vague and explained that it was just one of those weeks. She responded positively and did not inquire about what made my week difficult or mention what she wanted to discuss. 3 days later, I reached out to her to let her know I was finally emerging from my challenging week. Again, she didn't ask anything about my struggles or how I was doing. She simply replied that everything was fine and suggested we connect soon. The following day, while I was participating in the first social activity I had attended in weeks due to my busy work schedule, she called me during the day. I sent her a text explaining that I was out and would try to return her call later. She replied that it was no problem. Later that day, I encountered an unexpected issue and completely forgot to return her call. She did not attempt to call me or send any further messages that day or for the remainder of the week. I once again faced a demanding week at work, and that weekend I texted her to ask how she was doing, mentioning that I was barely managing. She replied that she was also feeling overwhelmed but did not provide any further details. 5 days later, after not hearing from her, I called her on a Sunday at 7:30 p.m. She did not answer and sent me a message stating that she was in a bad mood and was going to try to sleep it off. I messaged her back, saying no worries and that I hoped she would get some good rest. On Monday morning, at 7:00 a.m., she sent me a lengthy text consisting of 7 substantial paragraphs, accusing me of not being there for her and abandoning her during her difficult time. She included selectively chosen screenshots of her messages indicating that she needed to talk, conveniently leaving out my replies expressing that I was having a hard time and apologizing. She concluded the text by stating she would save herself and might reach out once she regained her composure. For clarification, this was 2 weeks and 5 days after she first mentioned wanting to discuss the situation, and I had been the one to reach out to check on her, as I was concerned about her silence. Feeling upset and a bit anxious about her behavior in these messages, I spent the day organizing my thoughts, and later that evening, texted her to express regret that my actions made her feel abandoned. I emphasized my desire to support her needs and emotions. I then admitted that I had been feeling overwhelmed with work, and the intensity of her feelings and calls was challenging for me at the moment, as it increased my worry and anxiety for her well-being. I acknowledged that I should have communicated my feelings earlier, though I secretly believed that my repeated texts about having a hard, stressful week should have been recognized. I omitted this point to focus on her needs. I suggested that seeing a therapist might be beneficial, sharing that it had been life-changing for me, and included a story about our childhood friends encouraging me to seek help. I hoped that by being open and vulnerable, she might consider the idea positively. I offered specific examples of activities I had received from my therapist in the past, aiming to convey that I was suggesting something I believed in deeply. I reinforced that her feelings were valid and typical, but emphasized that a professional would be better suited to assist her than I could. I concluded the text by reaffirming my support for her and my love for her, suggesting that if she ever couldn't reach me, she should send a message or voice memo detailing her situation. Although I might not always respond immediately, I would get back to her as soon as possible. She replied that she appreciated my apology, but added that in the future, if I lacked the capacity to listen to her problems, I should communicate that. Instantly, I felt frustrated by this assertion, as I believed my consistent mentions of my stressful situation indicated that I had limitations. My apology had already acknowledged that I should have stated it more explicitly. She also challenged my timing by highlighting a moment when it took me 3 days to respond. This referred to the previous time I mentioned when I let her know I was starting to feel better after my hard week, to which she merely replied that we should connect. Additionally, she did not acknowledge my suggestion about therapy, not even with a simple question about how long I had been attending, nor did she reject the idea outright. She completely dodged it. I chose not to respond to her message, as I felt deeply hurt and couldn't identify how to properly reinforce apologies I had already made. The next day, my mother called me, and the first thing she asked was, "Are you okay?" Confused, I shared that I was quite busy with work and that it was a hectic time, but I was otherwise doing well. She then became emotional, explaining that my sister had told her I was not there for her and had recommended that she seek therapy. "She doesn't need therapy, she needs her sister," my mom asserted. I felt utterly blindsided and hurt by both of them. I couldn't believe my sister would complain about me to our mom, and I was shocked that my mother was taking her words at face value and dismissing therapy as an inappropriate suggestion. I went on to explain to my mom how I had discussed the situation regarding the crush with my sister for months and had grown concerned about how it was affecting her mental state because of her cyclical need for reassurance. My mother insisted that my sister did not need to see a therapist and said I should never suggest it again. She added that if I felt too overwhelmed to talk to my sister, I should tell her what was stressing me, despite my having tried to do just that repeatedly through text without acknowledgement. My mom then declared that she was always available for me to discuss my feelings, which felt like a strange tactic to undermine the concept of seeking therapy. I generally do confide in her when I face difficulties, and informed me that she had been discussing my sister's situation with her daily. Every day. I gently suggested that maybe this frequent communication implied my sister was not managing her crush in a healthy manner, but my mother dismissed that notion. At the end of the conversation, she insisted that the whole situation was a miscommunication and urged me to call my sister, starting with "I love you." My mother also insisted that I should not mention to my sister that she had called about this. I told her I would need some time before reaching out to my sister and expressed that I needed to end the call. I feel manipulated and overlooked in this entire situation, but am I somehow at fault? The intensity of my sister's reaction to my apology and my mother's distress have led me to question everything, leaving me feeling confused and troubled. Story 5. HR payroll manager asked to automate their decisions away. In my initial position, I served in information technology as an access and permissions administrator at a large organization burdened with considerable technological debt. The work environment comprised custom software from the Windows 9X and even DOS eras. At first, the tasks seemed rather dull, requiring extensive communication across various departments. We were responsible for ensuring every employee received the appropriate training and documentation to access data within the parameters set by their manager. Furthermore, we needed consent from the manager of the relevant department concerning the system role involved. Compounding the issue, the company's excessive reliance on paper-based bureaucracy slowed the process significantly. Establishing a single SAP account for a blue-collar worker necessitated a minimum of 3 signed forms from different individuals. The department heads tasked with signing those forms did not perceive any urgency to expedite their delivery to us. A prime example of this was when I personally waited more than 2 weeks after being hired in the IT department before my first account was established. During that time, I was limited to a guest account that permitted access to the primary internal website containing company procedures, regulations, and other essential information. At that stage, each signed document had to be physically brought to us, an excruciatingly slow process considering the company had numerous branches. We resolved to automate the paperwork. Our initial step involved permitting the use of scanned documents. This effort was only partially successful. While it eliminated courier delays, management still mandated that we sign the physical copies afterward, which we mass stamped at the end of each month. The subsequent step was to implement a fully electronic workflow. We encountered substantial resistance from senior management, so we had to adopt a system that primarily mirrored existing paper processes. Despite this, it proved to be transformative. We designed presets that managers could select and modify as necessary, utilizing data from these modifications to create more suitable presets. We also devised workflows that automatically generated and assigned subtickets for required approvals and monitored the duration they took, sending reminders if necessary. Ultimately, we secured permission from human resources to access layoff data to create user block and removal tickets. Sometime after we launched the new system, the human resources and payroll manager raised a significant issue. She was outraged that her team continued to wait for weeks to receive their permissions and questioned whether all our efforts had been in vain. This deeply resonated with me. Internally, I was delighted, but I did my best to maintain a neutral demeanor. At that time, we were compiling summary reports with burndown and bottleneck charts, and I already knew that tickets requesting access for human resources and payroll were lingering for most of their lifespan awaiting her or one of her sub-managers' approval. The manager quickly became defensive, asserting that she could not keep up with the ticket volume. Subsequently, she requested a revision. Any request from her subordinate should be automatically approved within the relevant scope of their sub-department. For instance, a request for an HR employee to have full HR access and limited payroll access would be automatically approved for HR access, but not for payroll, and vice versa. I was skeptical, but was not in a position to dispute. I asked my supervisor to participate in the discussion and clarified that our objective was to avoid overly permissive approvals that might lead to unauthorized access. I attempted to persuade her to collaboratively brainstorm potential edge cases prior to instituting a blanket approval, but she was already resolute in her decision and uninterested in discussing specifics. My supervisor shrugged and indicated that it would be her responsibility. He instructed her to draft an official document detailing the change, and we would move forward with the implementation. Our only request was to include a clause stating that each such request would continue to be created, assigned as usual, and labeled as automatically approved by name of the main HR payroll manager's decision. I uploaded the scanned document into our system and, foreseeing potential repercussions, made a photocopy for easy access in the top drawer of my desk, while the original went into the archive. A few weeks later, she burst into our office. The speed at which she opened the door indicated her anger. She demanded to understand why we had granted her subordinate full access to payroll data. I believe this was the only occasion I ever heard someone yell within the company. I calmly reminded her of her request to automatically approve in-department access requests. She rejected this explanation, stating that one of her lower-ranking subordinates from the payroll sub-department had accessed salary information for everyone in the department, including managers, and was upset about pay discrepancies. Isn't it clear that such access should be restricted? Well, yes, to a human, but your request automated that decision. I presented her with a copy of the document she had signed, which directed us to automatically approve all such tickets unconditionally. Immediately after, she requested that we revert the change while she authored another document to annul the previous one. In the following days, she carefully scrutinized all those tickets and asked us to limit access for several users. I must admit, she conducted a thorough review and maintained a commendable pace in assessing new requests, doing so daily instead of every week or two, as previously. Ultimately, we succeeded in identifying a subset of permissions that could be automatically approved and proceeded to apply a similar strategy with other departments. I do not know whether that payroll employee received a raise, but I am confident they were not terminated, as there were no tickets submitted to block or remove any accounts from that department in the subsequent months.